show. Author's Corner, she asked about the books they wrote.
I'm so pleased to welcome to the show Daniel Donoghue. His work is incredible. I'm starting to peel some more layers because he has so much out there. We're going to talk to him about A Fortunate Son and Other Stories, which is a collection of stories written across decades of Daniel's life. You know, talking about when he was young all the way to present day, and he still is young. And what's really cool about Daniel and having him here on Author's Corner on America with me, Kate Delaney, he's also the author of more than 30 short stories. What? Get out of here. That is tremendous. And he does have a way with words, so I am not surprised. Daniel, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks so much, Kate. Thanks for having me.
So first of all, we got to roll back and you know, we can talk about the things that you've done in your life. You did a stint in the Navy. You grew up in northern New Jersey. You worked at NASA, which is fascinating, the Foreign Service. But do you think any of that piqued your interest of writing? Did you know, hey, I'm going to write about this. I'm going to journal, and who knows, maybe one day I'm going to write a bunch of stories.
Well, the first time that I really thought about becoming a fiction writer was as a teenager. You know, I read the classics, you know, from Hemingway to Steinbeck, Dreiser, and others. And it just gave me a feel. I was 16 or 17, and it gave me, like Steinbeck's Winter of Our Discontent, made me feel like I was in my 50s. You know what I mean? To have that kind of power and influence, you know, through the written word, just really inspired me. And then when I got into the Navy, that's when I really started my first short stories.
And so what was about the Navy, all the characters and the different things that you did, the people you met and the guys you hung out with?
Yeah. The first, I guess, push towards writing my first short stories was the year I spent on the Merchant Marines. I was in the Navy, but I was tasked to a Merchant Marine ship for a year. And this old sailor, very old, he was retiring, it was his last voyage. He made such an impression on me with the things he said, the stories he told. And I just felt, you know, I would like to memorialize him. You know, I would like to write about him and his life.
Wow. How cool. Because he was a character, like I said. I mean, you're around a lot of different characters. And I should say, too, you know, you've written the 30 short stories, and we're going to talk about your novel, too, but screenplays and plays. So it just sort of seems like it came pouring out of you. Did it feel like that?
It did. You know, the novel came, I was in the State Department, and I spent a year and a half in Zagreb, Yugoslavia, at the American consulate. And, you know, that was the genesis of the novel. And as far as the screenplay is based on the novel. I had no experience writing a screenplay, but I got the right software, and I said, let me try to turn this novel into a screenplay. And the play I wrote really came from watching and reading Eugene O'Neill's Long Day's Journey in the Night. It just inspired me. I'm not a playwright by any stretch, but I did write a play about a family in turmoil in 1970s New Jersey. And, you know, I'm not, believe me, not putting myself in the category of Eugene O'Neill, but, you know, the story kind of reminded me of what Long Day's Journey in the Night was about.
Nice. So let's talk about A Fortunate Son and Other Stories, which people can pick up, of course, on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever great books are sold. You can get it for a song out there in, you know, any form that you want. What inspired this?
Well, the stories are written over 4 decades. And I started probably the mid-'80s up until now. And the stories that were published in the collection are based on things that I experienced in my own life, things I've observed by watching different scenarios and people, and things that I've read. You know, I've read in the paper or an article and decided I really want to tell this story.
Yeah, and there's kind of there's kind of how you do this, and they're I think they're all different, obviously, and it's what you're saying there. I mean, you look at some really, I think, vulnerable experiences, and then some really tender experiences, and then when there's more chaos. And was that the idea? Hey, I'm not going to edit myself out. Any subject, what I feel is belongs in this, I'm going to put it in there.
Yes, exactly. I felt that there were about 6 or 7 short stories that I decided not to put in the collection. But, I felt each of the stories I decided to publish were meaningful. I felt that they touched on important subjects, whether it be personal or otherwise.
Yeah. And this is hard. This is like picking children, but do you have a favorite story that you put in the collection?
Yeah, it would be the title story, A Fortunate Son. I felt compelled to write that story after reading an article about a Black disabled Marine veteran in a wheelchair who was on a beach or on a boardwalk and got violently stabbed by this white teenager multiple times, had to go to the hospital. And I said, my God, what this guy's life must have been like to get him to that point. So I created a story around him, a life story from birth to the incident that happened. And while I was writing it, I just felt so moved by the story I was creating, about this guy's childhood, his service in Vietnam, getting his legs blown off, and what happened to him afterwards. And at the end of the story, as I was writing it and creating this background, I was thinking, how did this guy get through life? With, all these things he dealt with. And I thought of the Bible and I thought of the Psalms, and I put Psalm 116 and Psalm 42 near the end of the story as things that might have inspired him to go on and to carry on.
Yeah. The slice of life narratives aren't always your own. It's other people or tidbits of pieces of people that you see, right?
Yes. Yes, exactly. One of the stories, I was in a New York deli, a very crowded, busy, loud New York deli. And I saw this couple very quietly, staring at their plates, hardly looking at each other, hardly saying anything, in this busy, crowded restaurant. And they just stood out to me, and I was thinking, what could be going on with them, that would bring this situation. So, I just kind of created a narrative around that.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Again, we go back to how you write, and it's making me think. For people listening, you grew up in New Jersey. Obviously, you've traveled around. You talked a little bit about your career, and now you're in Santa Fe. And boy, for those again who are listening, I think it's such an inspiring place. Do you feel that?
Oh, very much so. I moved to Santa Fe 20 years ago from Austin, Texas, and the place just hit me kind of immediately, with its character, with the people, with the architecture, with the art, and we've been here 20 years, my wife and I, and we're going to stay here.
Nice. I like that. So when people read A Fortunate Son and other stories, what do you hope they take away from reading it?
Well, that's an interesting question. I would hope people would see, some of the stories are downers. Some of them are okay, emotionally flat. But I'd hope they take away some hope, that things can change. If they're in a dire situation, they're in a tough spot in their life, that, hopefully things will change, give them some kind of hope for the future.
Ooh, I like that. So after this, putting this out here into the world, which, just at the tail end of last year and bouncing into this year. And again, I'll mention easy to pick up on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, any of those spots. What do you have in the works next? I can't imagine you're sitting on your hands.
No, well, Right now, I'm actually working on getting my novel published in the summer, Gold in the Furnace, which is based on my time in Yugoslavia as the Civil War was breaking out in 1991. And so this love story, it's an illicit love story between an American diplomat and a Serbian woman. It's against regulations for an American diplomat to socialize with Yugoslav citizens because they were still labeled a communist country. So I created this kind of furtive relationship between these two people, and they meet secretly throughout the region, and their love affair grows. Then they have a bitter political fight in Dubrovnik, and then the Civil War happens, and the rest of it deals with their trials, their separation and their reunion as the Civil War is going on.
Wow. Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait for that, surely. And you know what that's like because you, in a sense, because you were there. So once again, it germinated that idea for what you're putting into your novel.
Right. And besides that, I'm going to work on a new play. I've only written the one play, and it's writing plays is completely different than writing short stories or novels. But I do have an idea that I'd kind of like to put down on paper.
Nice. All right, we can't wait to find out what that is. Daniel Donoghue, what a delight to have you on the show. Thank you so much for hanging with us.
Hey, thanks very much, Kate. I enjoyed it.